Hello, I'm Heather Kidder, and I am an English teacher of 7th, 9th, and 11th grade students, and one problem that I see in my classroom is learned helplessness. My classroom takes place in Wyoming, Iowa at Midland High School Middle School. I'm focusing my AIP project on my 7th grade English class. We're a one-to-one school with 6 rural towns traveling to attend the school in Wyoming. Each grade level has about 30 to 35 students, and there's no other middle or high school at our district. This specific class has 16 students, 2 with learning IEPs and 3 with 504s. We are a low-income school with a vast majority of white European students. We have 5 students in the whole school who are of African American background, and no students who speak a second language. It's a very non-diverse group of students. We have flexible seating in our classroom, which allows for collaboration, but also for individual seating for assessments. The problem of learned helplessness has been defined in 1981 by Johnson, a psychology researcher, and he's labeled it as an inability to think for oneself due to past training by authority. And a classic example is how we train pets. So if you have a dog who's been trained by an electric fence, he knows not to cross the boundaries because of negative experiences. Even if the fence is removed, the electric fence, the dog knows it cannot cross that boundary. It's learned helpless. Even though there's no more negative incentive, no more negative results, the dog does not cross because it's learned. However, in the classroom, this can become problematic. I see students refusing to produce. They're instinctually relying on me as a teacher, and they have confusion over our roles. So they'll ask questions even after taking notes, looking for feedback on every idea that they have, and resisting producing or finding information on their own. This results in a lot of frustration in the classroom, where they battle me and say, you need to tell me what to do as the teacher, whereas I as a student just do what you expect. And this is coming from uncontrollable bad events. So poor test scores in the past, bad grades on things they tried really hard on, and they feel like they have no control. The test is not going to be based on what they have prepared, and therefore they should just give up. They resign, and they feel like they have no reason for trying in the classroom unless they're doing exactly what the teacher has asked. So the background research on this area has shown 5 major areas of importance when it comes to learned helplessness. So learned helplessness has come from a lack of control, a lack of motivation, and then we look at more modern and mobile inquiry-based learning's effect on control and motivation, socialization's effect on control and motivation, and growth mindset's effect. So when my students are put in a position where they need to produce something or reflect on their learning and use their past resources, they cling to me. They cling to me as the teacher. They ask me to hold their hand and walk them through everything. And Prihati's research has shown that this defiance and this refusal comes because they are worried about those negative consequences. So if I can lower the anxiety, if I can lower the formality of my expectations and just ask them what they found and remove my expectations from it, then they will feel more in control. Additionally, Hiroto has shown that student choice improves motivation, and the mobile inquiry-based learning found that authentic choices and problem solving motivate students. So that motivation and choice can be enhanced through mobile inquiry-based learning, especially through problem solving. Additionally, Greener has found that the socialization factor builds motivation, and mobile inquiry-based learning promotes that socialization and sharing the problems and the solutions and interacting together with different ways to solve them. Additionally, the growth mindset researchers have found that a fixed mindset shares many of the same distinguishing features as learned helplessness. So therefore, a growth mindset instruction focus, giving students choice, showing them that practice can influence their performance, will help mitigate the problem of learned helplessness. The main issue that the researchers found was that teachers and schools believe that technology is distracting. And Hamari's group of researchers discovered that when teachers are trained with strategies to implement technology into the lesson, where technology is the center of the lesson, it is the means of exploring the issue, then technology is not distracting, but it's the motivating feature. It captures their attention. However, when the lesson has not been planned to be centered around that technology, but the technology is just added off to the side, it does become distracting. So it's a very possible distraction, but with planning and training, it actually feeds into the solution. It motivates students and captures their attention. So the solutions based on this research were new assessment styles that promote open-ended, creative products based on student experience. With the mobile devices, the goal is to allow some sort of creativity, choices, and aligned practices where students practice with the technology before they use it in an assessment setting. Additionally, the benefit of secure storage lowers the anxiety of students with homes that are disorganized or that are transient. They don't have to worry about saving their notes and preparing for an assessment based on papers they have, but they can come to school and access those stored securely in an organized way on their devices. So the goal is to promote choices and put students in charge at the center of this assessment. So my plan in the 7th grade persuasive unit is to use Inspiration Maps VPP. According to researchers, the lack of control students feel can come from the communication issue between teachers and students. So when the teacher presents a rubric or directions that are very specific on that teacher's terms, it takes the control away from the student and places the control in the teacher's hands. However, with this Inspiration Maps assessment style, it allows a student to create a mind map based on what they know, not based on what the teacher is asking. So the criteria for this assessment would be for students to show me 5 main ideas and then build off of those to a certain number of connections. So if a student wants to show mastery, they add more ideas. If a student is showing a lack of proficiency, that shows that they cannot come up with 5 main ideas based on the unit we've been learning. So this allows some creativity of students to choose what their test will look like, what style their test will look like, and they will have time to practice in class using these different styles and figuring out what works best from them. Once they've created a style, they then show the connections. So they can explain very specifically where their mind is going. What kind of connection are they making? Are they renaming something? Are they building a connection to their own life? Are they showing different features? And researchers Rothfelder, Regnar, and Wood in 2018 suggested that when students are placed in control during an assessment, it shows trust, and this trust motivates students. So if I give them this open-ended assessment for their final grade and they're in control of what they can produce, they're not worried about what they missed or what they don't know. They get to focus on what they did learn and what connections they can make, and this shows trust on the teacher's part and increased motivation on the student's part. Additionally, once they've created their mind map, they can start color coding or adding graphics or photos, and this allows those visual learners to prepare for the test and build connections that can help them with their recall. So if they're worried about staring at a blank screen when they're creating their assessment map, they can build their notes in a way that's memorable to them, that's color-coded or that relies on pictures, so that when they sit down at the assessment, they can build a connection in whatever way they are able to remember. So hopefully this will lower that anxiety and increase that motivation because they are in charge of their learning. Those same researchers in 2018 have predicted that motivation and trust are connected, and so I predict that through this assessment style that students will score more often proficient than they would below proficient, because they get to choose what 5 main ideas they have learned instead of me picking the 5 main concepts and asking them what they know about it. The practice using mind maps will be on our previous unit. We read A Long Walk to Water, and they'll focus on how Salva faced challenges during his journey. So they will build those connections, they'll choose styles of mind maps and build their ideas off of it. This helps them stylistically choose what works best for them, how their brain works. And then we'll move into our focus of this new unit, persuasion using pathos, ethos, and logos. So as we learn in class, they can pause and add to their notes. We'll pause and do group notes, and we have a mid-assessment that allows them to update those notes and show me how they're doing with interacting with this new assessment style. And again, the focus is on what they do know, which, according to the research, puts them in control and should enhance their motivation and therefore their testing scores. Additionally, based on research from Chang, and Shi in 2016, as well as Hamari, Shermoff, Rowe, Collier, Abel, Clark, and Edwards in 2016, the motivation will push students to not just survive in the classroom, but to excel. So this should increase those mastery level attempts as well as those mastery level scores. The signs of learned helplessness that should diminish based on this research is, again, that motivation of attempting mastery, showing what they do know, and also a change of classroom focus. So I would expect to answer less questions about what's on the test or what do I want, and more questions about what they can do and if the color coordinating works for them or what pictures would work for them, and allowing them to explore and be more in control of their assessment. So I expect higher level conversations and higher level attempts on the test at mastery. The reflection on this assessment and my project are that the single focus on the assessment and the Inspiration Maps VPP is one clear intervention, and all the results can be traced back to one change, which is helpful to track the changes and the improvements that happen in the classroom. However, it leaves out some important research. So the socialization factor with instructional interventions and problem solving, all of that in that instructional process is missing. So the AIP process could be valuable in applying it again and looking through different instructional techniques that can support student problem solving and student socialization. Due to my small class sizes, I would expect to not only meet these predicted positive results of higher academic achievement and higher motivation, but to exceed it because of the attention the students get one-on-one with the teacher. And the research base allows me to face each implementation with a mindset of the results and what's expected. Whereas if I'm following a fad or just implementing a strategy that sounds nice, I might be missing that foundational research or incorrectly implementing something in ways that can minimize its effectiveness. So if I approach these with a research base, as the AIP process allows, then I can really maximize those results. It gives me multiple views on how I want to implement it once it's research-based, and I can, through that process, eliminate possible issues before they even arise by looking at different implementation plans. Rahami, Karkami, in 2015, they worked together, as well as Varaga, Fernandez, and Lorenzo in 2016, and they looked at the difference that motivation makes in the classroom, that higher level achievement. And I know that students through the AIP process, as they learn in classrooms with increased motivation that are research-based, they can take those strategies with them into the workforce and into their communities and still be motivated to make a difference and to find those solutions. I see potential for this AIP process to help support collaboration issues, classroom management issues, as well as authenticity in the classroom, building case study interventions and important connections between the communities and the schools in ways that are research-based and will really help motivate students to make the best and become active participants of their educational classrooms and in the educational setting. Overall, evidence of lowered learned helplessness can be seen through this AIP process and can be predicted by increased proficiency scores and increased attempts at mastery as evidence of increased motivation.